nationalised insurance, they would still have that great quality of care and the great and that great accessibility that we enjoy as a result of our nationalised system. But this separation of policy is crucial to truly assess the best way to move forward. Of course, there is this great sense of national pride around our NHS, and I do think that this is misplaced. When we look at all these terrible statistics, these terrible mortality rates, and inability to manage some of the largest killers in modern day in developed countries, that is cancers and heart attacks. It doesn't present a system that we ought to be proud of. Of course, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be proud of the doctors and the nurses that are doing extraordinary work, but to be proud of a system that underperforms compared to others, that is not something to be proud of. We should place our pride in emergency workers. Just because we're critical of healthcare in the UK and nationalised institutions doesn't mean we don't have pride. In fact, to truly serve our nation for the best, it's best to place our pride and seek the very best for our population and be critical. That is what I'm pleading today and want to see happen in debates in the future. That's what is important. And so I hope that this has opened that argument and looked at areas that aren't discussed and allow for greater critical debate without this political scoring of talking about the US, like probably seeing the title of this show, you'd expect a little bit more of. But no, it's great to have a more sensible, rational debate. I hope you all enjoyed.
Well, that was a great debate. I do agree with some of the points mentioned at the last speech by our co-host Oliver. The reason why I haven't mentioned the American example as the opposition is probably perhaps that the US healthcare system is more of an exception rather than something that can represent the privatized healthcare system. And if you are the opposition, I would discourage you from bringing those examples. Of course, you can bring a few, but just bear in mind those things. So what you have seen right now is the debate that was primarily focused around the limited transfer of ownership to the private sector. The other way that the debate could go is that the proposition could argue that the privatization is the complete transfer, and that's where the opposition would take a way stronger stance, and that's where you probably can bring a lot of US examples. And the main argument in this kind of debate would be, on the opposition side, is the equity of access, that regardless of your financial background, it should be your right to access the healthcare. And one of the ways that you can explain this right is just simply link it to other fundamental rights that are given today to all of the people, because without proper health, you probably are not able to exercise your other rights, such as the right to life, the right to education, etc. And the way that you would compare the arguments with the proposition is, firstly, you can argue that equity of access is the argument that tackles the most marginalized groups in this debate, people who are unable to afford the healthcare, the privatized healthcare. And secondly, is that even if somewhat people don't care about marginalized people, there are still utilitarian benefits that are brought up if you provide the equal access to the free healthcare to the people, because a large portion of the population would be able to be productive and bring benefits to the economy via the increased amount of product that they can produce and increase GDP, etc., etc., etc. Right. So this is the example of a principled argument. You're saying that one right is higher than or more fundamental in comparison to the others, and the other small arguments that you might have put is that the privatized system might lead to the fragmentation, because you to some extent need to make a mix between a private and public sector. But those things are probably the points that are difficult to prove for one side only, and that's why I haven't brought up in the discussion that we had previously. So that was our great debate on whether the NHS should be privatized. Thank you for listening, and I hope you really, really enjoyed it.